Call the meeting to order, please. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please observe a moment of silence. Let's start with the roll call. Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Steben?
Here.
Commissioner Culberson?
Here.
Commissioner Cos, I'm here. And Commissioner Smith will not be here today. Okay, and we have public comment today. I see that we have Joe Herring. Can we start with you, please? Please state your name and your address, the record.
Good morning, Commissioners, staff. Joe Herring, Herring Surveying, 315 North 5th Street. Today we have two items on the rezone, and I'm sure staff will address this as well. But those two were, went as four before the Planning Commission last month, or earlier this month. They were all supported by staff, either voted 9-0 or 8-0-1 for approval. And I know that we tabled two of them because they had protest petitions, and I didn't quite understand that and wasn't in the place to have addressed it. But the four commissioners sitting up here all approved the comp plan. They approved the comp plan with the changes that were made by this board. So I didn't understand why we had to table it when the support was for these members. Mr. Commissioner Mike Smith wasn't on the board at that time. So that's my thoughts today, and I'm sure we'll have more next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Don Wilming, I see, is not here today, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Stuart Sweeney, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
I'm Stuart Sweeney here in regard to the Sherman Township clerk position, and just want to let you know that I'm open to working with anyone as clerk for the good of the township and for the fire department. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer your questions about me.
So I just say I met with Stuart for lunch yesterday, and I think everybody's in complete agreement that Stuart's the right approach to the future of and willing to work with the folks down there.
Thank you so much for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's all that we have for public comment today. Administrative business. Do you have anything for us today, Mark?
Commissioners, I did have one item just that came up recently. The one, as you were aware, we had some vehicles that were stolen from different departments. I think it's something that's going on countywide, but they have all been recovered. I just want to point that out. Not all of them in great shape, but they were recovered. So that's a good thing. And then the new round of funding has been announced through the Recovery Act. The federal government's allocating funds for capital projects, but they announced guidance, and those capital projects do not include what we were hoping would be capital projects that we consider like roads, bridges, and whatnot. It's mainly an expansion of the communications networks that allow for remote work, remote learning, remote health care. That's their primary focus, and it looks like Kansas will be allocated $143 million for that. So we're hoping that we do have projects that would meet that already on the shelf, and we're hoping that the state would open that up for the local municipalities to apply to. That's all I had.
Is that going to be divided by population, or will this be by project? Or?
Right now, it's 100% going to the state, so it'll be up to the state to determine how they're going to utilize the money. They could keep it and utilize it all for state projects that meet those needs, or they may open it up and allow local municipalities to apply. We don't know yet. And they just found out, this guidance just came out in the last couple of days. So I'm sure the state hasn't had a chance to really think it through. And it could change. Maybe they'll allow some direct applications. But right now, that's not the case.
I have a couple things.
Commissioner Stephen?
This is for County Councilor. I received this letter from the Kansas Corporation Commission. They say, I'm following up with Leavenworth County Commissioners, wondering if we're interested in discussion of the Atmos case and what our participation will be in the future. Can you kind of advise us what our role should be?
Certainly, Commissioner Stephen, Madam Chairman, members of the Commission. In response to your page-and-a-half letter regarding the abandonment of utility services by Atmos filed a 57-page response to the Kansas Corporation Commission. At this point in time, and I have had discussion with Corporation Commission staff, the primary objecting party to the proposed abandonment of services has retained private counsel. Atmos obviously has private counsel, as does the Corporation Commission. They have staff counsel. I would suggest simply acknowledge receipt of that notice, and I believe the county has participated to the fullest extent it can at this time without significant investment of time and money.
Okay, thank you. Second question I had was, can we, I know there's been a lot of issues brought up with folks in my area about the Call Valley SUP, and I wonder if we could put that on the agenda for some kind of discussion about what where we should proceed on that issue.
You want a work session? My understanding that they filed an appeal. It's back in court.
That's correct. Back in court on the issue of the roads, but I'm talking about the discussion on where we proceed with the SUP that's currently.
Commissioner Stephen, members of the Commission, if I could, on Monday afternoon we received notice that Kaw Valley had in fact filed a notice to the Court of Appeals in which they appealed the decision of the District Court denying their appeal. Until such time as I have had time to really look at the matter and perhaps confer with our counsel, who we retained for this matter, I'd suggest that any discussions be deferred till an executive session to include matters regarding the special use permit, but that certainly could be done within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so have an executive session in the next couple of weeks to talk about that?
It is your decision as to whether or not to discuss legal matters in open or executive session. I prefer executive session to protect the legal interests of the citizens of the county. It's somewhat, I use the analogy, it's like playing poker with your cards turned around the wrong way.
Right.
But certainly other issues that are of public interest can be discussed, but I'd prefer to have that executive session first.
And that's fine, but I think a lot of the folks down in my area are drawing a distinction between the issues that are being talked about in the court case, which specifically relate to the road and the fairness of the hearing and whether we were whether we had a due process here, as opposed to the many violations of the SUP that is sort of a separate issue that the Kaw Valley Corporation, the folks have brought many issues where they have violated the rules that we set forth as a commission. And those are two separate issues.
The issue as to whether or not Kaw Valley has violated any terms of the SUP, which of course is under appeal, can be brought up. I would suggest that something be made of note that no activity is taking place at that site at this time, nor would, under the terms of the SUP, even as it stands, Kaw Valley be allowed to initiate those operations without full compliance of the terms. So right now the status quo is no operations, and that would continue at least until some decision by this board, an agreement between the parties, and any decision by the Court of Appeals, I would suggest, would be unlikely to occur in the next year.
So your recommendation would be that we have a further executive session to discuss this among ourselves and then figure out how we will bring the discussion of the SUP forward.
Well, that's one option you can consider. I would suggest, though, that your legal options be discussed in executive session.
So, all right.
Madam Chair, I got a couple things. I'll try not to take too much time. October 1 is coming Friday. Hopefully the federal government will pass a budget. With that being said, I've got some real concerns about our FEMA money from the 2019 tornado, the May tornado. That's several $100,000 that came out of the public works budget to do the cleanup. I really think we need to ask for some additional help from our state senators and state representatives and U.S. senators and U.S. representatives. The longer this goes, the more likely we're not going to receive these funds. I mean, we need to ask for some help. I mean, our staff has done everything that they need to do to get this money.
I would agree.
We need to send some letters, and maybe we need to reach out to Douglas County because they're affected by it too. But that's a lot of money that needs to come back to our Public Works Department, because that money was supposed to be, that we used to do the cleanup, get rid of the debris and all that, was supposed to be spent on roads.
Exactly.
So we need to get it back. So I'm open to any suggestions. If we could craft a letter to somebody, to all these folks in our position, because we've been through 2 federal government budgets and we still haven't got our money.
And the governor should get a letter too.
I agree.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because it goes through the state, then to the Fed. That's what I'm saying. We need to reach out to anybody that can give us some help. I mean, we got to wave the white flag. We've done all we can do. We need help.
Could we have you draft some letters, Mark?
I can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it does seem a little, I don't know, it doesn't seem like they're putting a lot of effort into it when they can distribute, several $1 trillion in a matter of months.
Right.
But they can't, in the course of 2.5 years, get our money resolved through FEMA.
And it's just not for the May tornado. It's also for the Missouri River flooding, too. And it's a lot of money.
I agree. Thank you, Doug. And? Yes.
After we had our work session last week about the American Recovery Act funds, I understand, about the matching funds for other entities that want to put a match, but I really think that money was intended to be spent in the county, and I mean, all the things that Mr. Knoll addressed, I know we've been kicking it down the road for years. I really think we need that money spent on our county infrastructure with box culverts, bridges.
Are you talking about where we're going to set aside $1 million for other entities? Or?
I mean, just anything that comes down. If some agency comes in here, I understand the matching part if it's roads or sewers, but if it could be another qualifying expense that wouldn't have anything to do with roads or something. But I really think we have the needs in our road system and our drainage. We need that money.
Oh yeah, we're not even keeping up.
We're not keeping up.
We don't have brush crews anymore. We don't. All the bridges that need
the money that
replaced.
could be spent on these eligible expenses could be used for brush removal, stuff like that, or just the money we spent removing the brush from the tornado would cover pretty much what we need for a brush crew. But that's just, I just think about that after the work session. I just thought, man, we really have a lot of needs.
I thought I'm just trying to understand what you're saying.
Well, I just don't want
I agree.
something
entity to get them.
Yeah, that come.
But that's why I was wondering if you're talking about. I think we
decided $1 million for out. I'm thinking.
Yeah, I get it.
Maybe that's, but
Yeah,
you don't want to turn down any matching funds either. But I'm just thinking we have needs.
Well,
And
yeah.
we have this money and it was sent to us.
Well, we have, we made a decision that we're going to significantly help one of our communities, and we set aside to me, out of this $16 million, we set aside one to match the amount, and that includes Leavenworth, Lansing, Tonganoxie, and the 2 smaller communities, Easton and Linwood. So they may want to match I mean, I don't think we should close the door, is what I'm saying.
Well, and what I was also getting at is, you hear about all these packages trying to get passed or attached to a spending bill. If there's more money, we really need to keep it for the counties. I mean, we've got the information we need. We know what our needs are. We just don't have the money to satisfy the needs.
Yeah, there is so many projects we just don't have the funds to do. Bridges, brush, surveying. I mean, there's a lot of projects we just kick to a back burner because we just don't have the money. So that's the hard part, is when money shows up, what is a priority?
Well, I think as long as we got a plan, we have our priorities. Anyway, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything, Jeff?
Nope.
I have nothing further, so we want to move on to the consent agenda. I need to have the check registry removed from the consent agenda, but other than that, I would entertain a motion to...
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the consent agenda minus the check registry.
Second.
Second. Have a motion and a second. All in, start with
Aye.
Commissioner.
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the check registry.
Never mind, I approve. Yes.
Okay, yeah, that was without it.
Yep.
So now, without the check registry consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Aye.
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 Abstain. Okay, formal board action. Let's see. Consider a motion to appoint a clerk to the Sherman Township Board.
Mrs. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Stuart Sweeney to be the next Sherman Township Clerk.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I visited with Stuart yesterday, and I know over these many years of service that he has the vision for our community, and I really respect this choice.
And I also visited with him 4 weeks ago.
And I worked with Stuart before on a cemetery project, so I'm familiar with him too.
Sounds to me like there's a pretty strong consensus of the board to approve Mr. Sweeney, so let's move forward with a vote. I'll start with Commissioner Culberson.
Aye.
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 Congratulations, Mr. Sweeney. Welcome.
Thank you for willing to
Thank
serve,
you.
Mr. Sweeney. We should have did this 2 weeks ago, but
Okay. Second, consider a motion to approve place the equipment listed by Public Works as surplus equipment and sell the items on Purple Wave.
All right, Commissioners, today for your consideration, what we have is some three pieces of equipment. These pieces of equipment are primarily used for brush control, and we have a pretty long narrative as to why we consider these as a proper replacement item. We can quickly run through some of these pieces of equipment, but we have a 2019 Bobcat track loader. It was the first year that the hydraulic system included an automatic adjustment for the tracks, and it has issues. The tracks continuously fell off of it. It's been in the shop, our personal shop, 21 times, and it's been into the dealership 7 times. It is now out of warranty. It was primarily purchased in order to run the brush control forestry head. That piece of equipment does not work properly on it. They did put an undersized track on it in order to prevent it from having the tracks fall off, which has caused other issues. We purchased that in 2019 for $58,000. The current retail price on that machine is $91,000. We did get a very good price for that. Researching Purple Wave, one with about twice as many hours had recently sold for $56,000. This machine, being in good condition, operates doing dirt work and loading rock properly, but just does not run the forestry head that we intended it to run correctly. And so we believe we can get the majority, if not all, of our original purchase price back out of that machine and get into a new machine with a full warranty, as this warranty just expired about 45 days ago, and not incur the cost that this machine will most definitely have associated with it. Then we had a mowing tractor and also the Boom 2015 Boom Tiger mower that we'd like to replace. Both of those are for efficiency. Currently, we are mowing with the side mowers. We can go to a pull-behind type mower with a 10-foot deck, and we can mow hopefully twice as much area with that single machine. As you guys are aware, with the reduction in previous staff and then the reduction of the inmates that we did have doing brush control, we do need to cover a larger area, and this is an attempt to try to cover a larger area with a single piece of machinery without adding employees. It also is running out of warranty soon, and we could get it underneath a full warranty piece of equipment. And then finally, the Boom brush mower. It is mounted on a truck. If we mount this on a tractor and get one, we can get one that we can get off the roadway with, get down into the shoulder or into the ditch to push back towards the right-of-way. We've had issues in the past with the fact that it sits on the road and primarily operates with the full extension of the boom arm, which is sheared off pins and had different mechanical issues. It is due for replacement. We would generally bid that in about 2 years, but we could move forward with another machine under warranty that has a longer boom and allows us to get off the roadway and reach some of those areas out near the edge of our right-of-way that need to be controlled. Ideally, we need to get to these trees that are growing that are small enough to get with that machine prior to them being too big that you have to send a crew out to cut them down, or we ended up having to hire someone to get them cut out of the power lines, obviously. So what we're trying to do is improve some efficiency and continue to operate under warranted machines. Got any questions? I'd be happy to try to answer them.
No, I'm glad you're showing initiative to get rid of this stuff, because if it's not working, it's not doing anybody any good. And I don't know how many times I sat where you're sitting, and county commissioners was telling me what we needed to buy that had no clue about equipment. Seemed like the less they knew, the more they got their way. But anyway, I think, if you buy something bigger than you need and you overpay for it, you're only doing it one time. But if you buy something that's too small and doesn't meet your need, you pay for it every day.
Yep.
So I'm glad to see you're trying to correct this and get the equipment you guys need out there.
You ready for a motion?
Entertain a motion?
Make a motion, we approve Public Works to put the equipment listed and surplus equipment on Purple Wave.
And motion second? Second. Begin voting with Commissioner Bulbertson.
Aye.
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 And
Motion approved.
the Bobcat, you get a really good governmental discount, correct?
Yeah, so I've previously leased Bobcats for as little as $7,500 a year, and so you can enter into a lease with full maintenance and operate those machines at a much reduced rate from purchasing them outright. Even if you purchase them outright, based upon the 2019 price of $58,000, you go on the Bobcat website and punch in the specifications for that machine, it's at $91,000. So you're looking at a really significant reduction in price, but. Yeah, I think that under a lease package, a government lease package, I've had them previously where they replace the machine on a yearly basis. Sometimes it's biannually, so you get a new machine every 2 years. Prices have generally ranged between $7,000 and $10,000, maybe $11,000 if you get a 100 horsepower machine. But when you're looking at a $100,000 machine with no maintenance cost, but what we're using the machine for is pretty hard on the machine. If you're running the forestry machine, you're running the embankments, and you're trying to get through brush, the life expectancy of that machine isn't going to be as long as you would normally see on a construction crew. So lease packages are really cheap comparatively, and allow us to get into those new machines continuously where we don't have this downtime. This machine's been in the shop the majority of the time that we've owned it, probably over 50% of the time.
But when it is out, it does a really good job. I mean, so hopefully we'll get a big enough machine, it'll stay together and go on down the road.
I think the machine size is appropriate. I think it's the fact that it's the first year of this new model, or they keep having metal. They've had, on 2 occasions, they've had to take metal shavings out of the hydraulic lines. So something within the hydraulic system is having issues. 100 horsepower, I mean, they can run a mill head to grind asphalt. They should be able to run a mill head that grinds trees. So I think that the sizing of it's appropriate. I think that there could have been a case made this piece of machinery was a lemon, honestly, but hindsight being 2020, I think that a course of action is appropriate to replace that machine under a warranty machine.
You've done really well on Purple Wave.
Right now, it's really high.
Yep. Anyway, thank you.
And stuff's not coming quickly, so I think that's where people are looking for these newer machines. We bid the semis yesterday, and most of them are being bid now for 2023. So we're going to continue bidding equipment, but some of that equipment is going to be bid now to lock in prices that we won't actually receive for 18 months.
That sounds like the court system.
Yes.
That's twice as fast as FEMA.
Could be 3 times.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are going to consider a motion to approve Resolution 2021-44, a rezone from RR-5 to RR-2.5, located on the east side of 242nd Street.
Good morning, Commissioners. Before you is Resolution 2021-44. As mentioned, it is located at 17326 242nd Street outside of Tonganoxie. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property from our Rural Residential 5 to Rural Residential 2.5. As mentioned, this is on the east side of 242nd Street. The future land use map has this designated as residential, so RR 2.5 would be in conformance with the comprehensive plan. Just to note that this property is approximately 5 acres. To be able to split the lot, which I think is what the applicant is intending to do, they will need to make sure that they are 5 acres before they can split it into 2 parcels. That would equal 2.5. At the time of subdivision, we would ensure that everything is in compliance with the zoning and subdivision regulations. However, given that this is in compliance with the comprehensive plan and the rest of the analysis was in favor, staff did recommend approval, and the Planning Commission voted 9-0 to recommend approval to this body. If you have any other questions, happy to answer them.
I have a theoretical question on our land use as opposed to our zoning.
Okay.
When and what objective standards could be used for us to determine when we're going to not comply with our land use plan?
So, in regards to rezonings, by state statute, a rezone is considered, there are 8 factors that are considered, and it's in your staff report. It's the character of the neighborhood, the zoning. And
the golden rules.
Yep, exactly. So when staff, Planning Commission, and the Board of County Commissioners is considering a rezone, these are the factors that you consider. Now, in regards to the comprehensive plan and how that fits in with making this decision, there is a specific factor that asks what your comprehensive plan is. But ultimately, your comprehensive plan is your guiding document on how you should start looking at making these land use decisions. That doesn't mean that you automatically always go with what the comprehensive plan has designated, but there would have to be a pretty significant case on one of these other factors that I would recommend.
I guess what I'm getting at is if we're going to deviate from the comprehensive plan. It seems like there should be some objective standards or reasons why we would deviate, but the other difficulty I have is it seems like we're ending up rubber stamping these, and I think that's the balance there, and I'm looking for objective ways to where we can
I think
draw this out.
It's kind of like just because you can doesn't mean you should. In some cases,
But then
Not
we've
in all,
got to
but
be
in some.
careful that we're not arbitrary.
right?
And capricious.
That too.
Well, I think as long as the zoning map doesn't match the comprehensive plan map, you're going to feel like you're rubber stamping a lot, because that's the only reason really these are coming, is because they don't match the legal zoning map that we've adopted.
But
The comprehensive plan is a way better plan than a 30-year-old zoning map.
And I understand that, but it's just I'm struggling with some of these.
I think that when we have
Might be 50 years old.
but when we have cases where we have a subdivision and
It's already platted.
it's already platted, and people have purchased their homes and built their homes, and then somebody has, then we have adopted a new comprehensive plan that identifies an area and says now we're going to allow for 2.5 zoning versus the 5-acre zoning. That originally in the zoning was 5-acre zoning, and then now somebody can come in and say, okay, I'm going to now. And so I think that we need to kind of look at.
And that's why we need to revisit the comp plan.
Well, I think that actually what we need to revisit though is our subdivision how we allow for the.
Another split.
So, yeah,
How many
Commissioner,
splits we allow?
that's one of the reasons why we are going to be scheduling a work session to review the comp plan and some of the subdivision guidelines. And I understand what you're saying. And, when applicants follow the rules, it should seem like a rubber stamp because they've followed all the rules. They've met our regulations. It's just a matter of approving them. When there are exceptions or they're asking for a variance, then those are the ones that you really have to look at hard. And these cases that you're seeing right now, they've followed the rules, and therefore they expect an approval unless something comes up that you can say, this doesn't meet our golden factor, character of the neighborhood, something like that. So I don't call it a rubber stamp. It's a process, and they've followed the process. I think the thing that you're discussing as far as a previously platted subdivision, when we redo our comp plan, we probably should have acknowledged in the comp plan that those were platted, and therefore whatever they were platted at that time in Zone 4 remains. But at the time of the comp plan, what happened is there was more of a broad scope approach of saying, if it's in this area, it's 2.5. Well, now we can go back. It's like any comp plan. You review it annually. You see the things that you're dealing with on a regular basis, and you address those. So that's an area where you could go back to the comp plan, update the comp plan to carve out those 5-acre platted subdivisions and leave them as 5-acre platted subdivisions. So that's what we'll do as part of the work session and as part of the review of the comp plan. That is on our list. I've already talked with Amy about that before, so when we have our work session, that will definitely be one of the items we address.
And I think water and drainage and that kind of thing should at least be discussed in that context.
But that's kind of
That's in
part
the
of what the
planning
engineering and the
process.
planning process.
It could be, but we had a subdivision earlier this year that involved a retention pond that wasn't recorded, and so in that case you get into a little more detail
Right.
than so.
We can't fix what they did in the past by not recording it.
Well, I'm not saying. I'm just saying we've got to have a way to address
and
it.
I think all that
Kind of like
is,
railroads, huh?
is
To be
a lot of
discussed.
it. Yeah, but
Thank you, by the way.
anyways, and I'm starting to get a little dust on my comp plan in the office, so we need to dust it off and get it out. Not as much dust as the old comp plan was.
Well, and I will say this: when people are reaching out to me and they're telling me well, the neighbors don't want it, or it's historically been this time. What I tell them is, look at these golden factors and then make your argument based on these golden factors is how you should make your argument to us. And that's, I have communicated that to a couple people, but I understand, that things are really changing. People are moving in. It's really a time of transition, and it's not easy.
Growth. The last census, we have areas of our county that are adding 30-40% population growth. It's going to be changed.
Southern part of the county.
50. Last year was 50%.
Southern part, and like I said, and if you're a mile and a half out of the side of the city limits and you don't think the city's going to catch you, you're wrong.
It's it's hard for people though when great granddad moved here and he was part of the original settlement, and you're seeing your community turn in what in their mind is we're turning into Lawrence or we're turning into.
Well, if it's that important to you, you need to buy up all the property, I guess.
Well, yeah, but
You can't always
not
afford
unlimited
that.
resources.
Right.
I understand, but in the Constitution, you can own property, and so can your neighbor.
I know, but we have
Good
to be
fences
sensitive
make
to
good
how people feel.
We don't want you to tell us what to do on our property. We want you to tell them what to do on their property.
Well,
That is the biggest conundrum.
I get it, but it's not a satisfying answer to them.
The world changes, and the world has changed a lot since this pandemic. And there's a lot of people working from home that'll never return to work. They're going to continue to work at home, so therefore they're probably going to move out here. So, there's just
All we
nothing
need is
can
rural
do.
internet.
When commutes are no longer a problem.
Well, are there any other questions of
We
Amy?
did. We did.
Well, yes, I mean, let's kind of
But-
move back into, are there any questions for Amy on this? Or,
Pretty
No,
straightforward.
I went out and looked at this, I noticed on the next one, it says south of I-70, but it's really north of K-32, south of Loring.
I
But
just
this
have
one here,
one
south of
question.
Evans and north of Honey Creek. So.
I just have one little question. So in the aerial photo, I didn't see in any of the report where they talked about the buildings that are already existing.
Right.
So if they do split it, aren't they going to have to get rid of a building?
They may have to. That's why I said, they would have to be brought into conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulations at the time of plating.
Okay. Because, I looked at it and I couldn't figure out how you could get the proper amount of road frontage in a straight line to the back of the lot without creating what do they call them, a mailbox lot? Or,
Flag lot.
Non-compliant.
but
Yeah.
it's already, that's why I was
I
confused
figured
as
they'd
to
have
why
to tear
this
the
is
building
even
down or part of it or something.
before
Okay.
us.
That's all I had. Whose district is that? Yours or Doug's?
Mike's district.
Mike.
Oh, you want me to make the motion? Okay, yeah. Move that we approve Resolution 2021-44, rezone from RR5 to RR 2.5, located on the east side of 242nd Street.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Begin voting with Commissioner
Aye.
Hobson. Aye.
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 Motion approved. Okay, let's see, next, we will consider a motion to approve Resolution 2021-45, a rezone from RR5 to RR 2.5, located at 230th Street at Linwood Road intersection. Amy?
All right. Again, before you is Resolution 2021-45. As mentioned, this is a vacant lot on 230th Street, about a quarter mile north of the 230th and Linwood intersection. The property is currently zoned rural residential 5. The applicant is requesting to rezone it to rural residential 2.5. The property is approximately 80 acres in size. In regards to future plans, there's no definitive plans at this time. They are just seeking this rezone due to its compliance with the comprehensive plan. This is actually denoted in the County Road 1 section of the Comprehensive Plan land use map. However, it is adjacent to land that is designated residential, and based off past practice, if it's adjacent, we have recommended approval on that. So staff is generally in support. The Planning Commission did review this and voted 9-0 to recommend approval of the case. If you have any other questions, that's about as much information I have at this time, though.
I drove out and looked at it. There was some. I know we'd received some concerns about the road and that. We just did some paving on Loring Road, which is north of there. And I believe, was this under the moratorium when County Road 1 had the moratorium?
If it's in the corridor, it would have been under the
It would have been under the moratorium. So we had a hold on this property for over 10 years?
That's correct.
Over 10 years, waiting for the comprehensive plan or the County Road 1 rezone.
Yep, that was right on the edge
Yep.
of the
Right.
moratorium.
So I'm
That's
saying
correct.
we put this property on hold, everybody's property in that area on hold for over 10 years. You had to come in here if you wanted to do something with your property and beg the commissioners to grant you a variance out of the moratorium. So, I say this has been a long time coming. We spent a lot of money down there. We got a turnpike interchange. If you don't think that area is going to grow, it's going to grow. And you got a new school coming up on K32, not too far from this. I guess it's on the other side of Leavenworth.
And these won't be small houses. That developer
Not
doesn't.
the person that owns it, no.
Yeah, that developer does not do small houses.
Or, yeah.
So we're talking about a
Not
major
affordable.
contribution to the tax base.
To help pay for the money we invested in County Road 1 and the turnpike interchange.
Little happy commissioners with rooftops.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we based the county, the Leavenworth County, put everybody's property on hold for over 10 years.
That's
because of
correct.
this.
That is
That
correct.
was wrong.
Yes,
That
I
should
agree.
have never
It should
went
not-
past 5 years.
I agree with you on that. I mean,
So, and we fixed that.
One of the things we fixed. Yep.
So,
I came,
On drainage-related issues, that's going to be handled in the planning process.
Correct. We look at runoff drainage during that process, yes.
What about the fact if a neighbor says they have a wildlife preserve type of a area? Does that come into your?
We don't really have
Consider.
anything in our ordinance right now allowing to that. Now, if it's on their private property, obviously, they most likely placed an easement over to protect that in the future. However, their personal easement doesn't extend beyond their boundary line. So it would be something that would have had to have been probably established by the state or the federal government for us to really
Take that into account. So at this point, you don't take that into account.
No, like I said, there's nothing in our ordinance that really looks at wildlife preserves and has a recommendation to further extend preservation of that area.
couldn't extend it to other people's property.
that's correct.
Well, I'm
That's
just
why there's
I'm
fences.
just asking because it's been an issue that's been raised. So
You
I
ready?
ran into some wildlife last night, and it wasn't pleasant.
Fence didn't keep him out, did it?
of the black and white variety.
And it wasn't a dead skunk in the middle of the road.
There you go.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Commissioner Stephen doesn't have anything else. You ready for a motion?
I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. We approve Resolution 2021-45, rezone from 5 to 2.5 acre on 230th Street and Linwood Road.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Begin voting with Commissioner Culberson.
Aye.
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 I
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, Amy, next we have the proposed amendment to the 2006 Leavenworth County Zoning and Subdivision Regulations, Article 32.
All right. The item before you is a request to amend the zoning regulation language in regards to recreational vehicle. This was, language was presented to this body in a study session previously. There really hadn't been too many changes during that time period, with the exception of allowing for RVs to be located permanently in mobile home parks, and then the addition that some sort of tie-down system would have to be placed on those RVs in the event of tornadic or other type of weather. Again, staff hasn't really changed too much. The Planning Commission did review that language at the beginning of this month and did recommend 9-0 to amend the language to allow for this. Just a temporary recap, what this is going to allow for people to do is to temporarily live in an RV on a residential property for a specified amount of time, specifically 90 days in a calendar year, as long as they meet certain criteria. It would also allow for the temporary dwelling of RVs during the construction of a residential home. Again, there are specified conditions to when that would be allowed, and then the last would be allowing for permanent dwelling within an RV in a mobile home court. So if you have any further questions, please let me know.
I have one. Does staff, and the language doesn't really cover it, but should we have discretion if they appeal and they have a family issue to go beyond 90 days, that staff has discretion to?
I think so, because last year I knew a couple people that lived in RVs because of the
tornado.
I think we should put a little
pandemic
provision in that they have staff has discretion to extend it.
I agree.
That would require it to go back through the Planning Commission. So you're aware.
We can't amend it here. So
I think it would be best to send it back so that they would have the ability to review that language and make sure it's in compliance.
Well, it won't affect anything if it goes back. Well, I
would assume we'd have that ability anyway without putting it in writing.
I would recommend, because I know what the board was trying to accomplish via the work session twice that we had on this, that you approve the language as presented today and ask that Amy take back through the proper process to include language that allows for extensions via an application with the planning and zoning staff. That way you've gotten the
let's approve it to this
main
point.
part
That's
is
good.
approved.
Let's approve it to this point and then just.
when you bring it back.
But Dave, wouldn't we always have the option to
Grant a variance.
Yeah.
And I do think
Like
that was
anything
what the intention was, that the variance would have to come to the board, not through the planning,
I
just the
see.
staff. And
I
I think
see.
what Commissioner Stephen is saying, his preference would be to allow the staff to do that. To get
I
a
see.
variance from our code, it comes to the board.
And why should it have to come to the board?
I see.
So
Okay.
that's the difference.
Because a lot of times they're kind of emergency situations.
Yeah.
So you could still allow it.
Yeah,
It's just it would have to come to the board.
Yeah,
to
let's
the
get it
staff.
done so the phone calls will quit. I got calls for a couple years. What do you mean you don't have any rules about living in RVs? Now I'm getting calls. What do you mean you're going to have rules about living in RVs?
Well, so you're recommending we go ahead, approve it, you
Yes.
bring it back to us at a future time to make the amendment.
Yep, let's do it
Okay.
that way. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve. If there's no further discussion. Motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve Resolution 2021-46, text amendment to the Article 32 recreational vehicles.
Motion second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
And you will be bringing that back to us. Right, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes the formal board actions. Is there any presentations and discussion items that anybody else would like to bring with us right now?
Just remind everybody about the Council on Aging fundraiser. There are still tickets available. I went out and purchased mine. I think there's a few left for seating, but there's also that takeout. The takeout, which there's plenty of tickets. So hope everyone supports Council on Aging. Let's get back to what it was before the pandemic hit. So,
Okay.
everybody got their tickets? I got an extra one if anybody needs one.
Have tickets. I already
I got
have my
3.
tickets and gave some away. And
Well,
You
And
think
it's turkey and dressing and that kind of thing.
roast beef,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
get to choose between.
that's what us skinny people need.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, of course, I went to Basehor City Council last week. They had tabled the annexation
Thanks, Amy.
till the 9th, I think, of October, second Wednesday of October. And, of course, went to Fairmount Township Fire Department, or Township Board meeting. And also, I did not make the Board of Directors meeting I made the Board of Directors meeting yesterday, but I didn't make the Budget and Personnel. So, a lot of things going on at Mid-America Regional Council. Of course, they have a lot of unfunded road projects in the state of Missouri. Everybody's got a lot of needs, but no funding. And there was another thing that's coming up. They'd received some funding to do a watershed study on must be Blue River watershed. It'd be Clay, Cass, Jackson County, and Missouri. You know, I don't know if we do anything like that around here on Stranger Creek. You know, that's our main.
There's a Stranger Creek committee.
But there's not a watershed. You know, because you get north of here and there's a lot of watershed districts and stuff like that. So I didn't know if you knew much about that with your background.
Yeah, I mean, there are
There's watershed districts here.
What is the history of that?
Commissioner Powers is probably more versed in this than I am. There is an existing Stranger Watershed District.
Right.
I don't believe it's actually active at this time. It was in the past, but for reasons I'd prefer not to go into, it has no funding at current time to my knowledge. I do know there was a Corps of Engineers study that was done pursuant to the planned flood control lake that would have impounded Stranger Creek just north of Tonganoxie and flooded the Stranger Valley almost up into Atchison. It would have flooded the city of Easton. There was an alternate plan submitted that called for a series, of hundreds of small impoundment ponds along Stranger drainage to try to reduce the amount of flooding that happens. But there have been previous studies, but they're decades old.
Mm-hmm. And every state's a little different. I'm not familiar with how Missouri does it. It sounds like they create their own watershed districts, but Kansas pretty much defaults to the Corps and FEMA for all their watershed issues. They don't have a funding mechanism. They don't have a mill levy or a budget line item. So,
well, but even in Kansas, if you get north of here, like up in Brown County and stuff, they have. You go along, you see all these detention ponds. It looks like.
Yeah, I would imagine those were Corps or FEMA related.
That stuff. We're always talking about water detention on these subdivisions and everything. There's. I'm pretty sure and I didn't know what money was out there. I just, they're getting some federal money for this to do this study. But you got to have a study before you can put together a plan too. Anyways, that's all I had.
Commissioner Stevens, anything?
I met with water districts 1, 2, 5, and 12, or I'm going to meet with 12. I met with 1, 2, and 5 about the American Recovery Funds. They had a conference, and I think somebody spoke there about how water districts could qualify for that funding. So I went to kind of explain how that works to them. Also, I come across a contractor that specializes in federal grants, and I'm working with Mark on that. I think we're going to have a conference call with them. They also have the connections to maybe help us with pilot funding, so the payment in lieu of taxes for the federal government. And I'm also going to talk to him about the FEMA, because it sounds like they're in the same circle. Mm-hmm. So I was going to, when you said that this morning, Doug, I thought maybe I'm going to talk to them about the FEMA tornado funding too, and see if they could help with that. So we're supposed to meet with them next week. Okay. And then I have a meeting with Lance Neely about those same issues. And then Commissioner Smith and I are meeting with a group tomorrow about the state LVTR and demand transfer funds to see if we can get a group together to start addressing that and at least make the public more aware of it, if nothing else, because I think that's the biggest problem is nobody you talk to even knows what we're talking about. So
just been so many years, it's just accepted.
Yeah.
Right. Good.
So
Very good.
tomorrow morning at 9, I think we're
Focus
meeting.
more about how the county commissioners raise all the taxes. Not,
Shell game.
yeah.
That's about it.
Well, I volunteered over the weekend for the Camp Leavenworth event, and it was a very successful event. There were over 10,000 people that attended. So I think it was well attended and brought a lot of attention to Leavenworth County and specifically a good event for the city of Leavenworth. And yesterday I participated in the workforce development, both the CEO board meeting and the partners meeting. And then last evening, the city of Leavenworth commission meeting. So that's pretty much it. So I think that's what we have for today. I'll entertain a motion if nobody else has anything for us to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Voting?
Aye.
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 We're adjourned.
Wow.